I want you to close your eyes for a second and imagine the coldest, most hollow feeling in the world. Now imagine being 6 years old and realizing that the person who is supposed to be your savior is actually the person who wants to see the light go out in your eyes. I'm standing in a kitchen that smells like expensive vanilla candles and clinical bleach, staring at a woman who looks like a Sunday school teacher, but has a heart like a frozen tombstone. She just told me, with a terrifyingly calm smile, that she had decided to cancel Christmas for 3 foster children. Not because she couldn't afford it, but because she wanted to teach them that the world is a cruel, empty place. I felt the floor drop out from under me as I realized I was the only thing standing between these kids and a trauma that would scar them for life. I had to make a choice that night. Do I follow the rules of my career and let their spirits be crushed? Or do I become a criminal to give them a miracle? Was I wrong for what I did? Or would you have burned your entire life to the ground to save those children just like I did? Tell me the truth in the comments right now, because I still haven't forgiven myself for how far I had to go. My name is Sarah, and I've been a social worker for 10 years, dealing with the worst humanity has to offer, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the psychological warfare of Mrs. Henderson. When the case of the Miller siblings landed on my desk in late October, I felt a glimmer of hope. Lily was 8, a protective little soul who carried the weight of her siblings on her tiny shoulders. Tom was 6, a boy who just wanted to kick a soccer ball and forget the chaos of his past. And then there was baby Mia, only 4 years old, a girl who still believed that magic was real. Their mother had lost them to a brutal cycle of addiction, and after months in crowded emergency shelters, they needed a win. They needed a home. When Mrs. Henderson's profile came up, she looked like the VIP of foster parents. She was a wealthy widow, lived in a sprawling mansion in a gated community, and had a pristine record spanning a decade. I thought I was sending them to paradise. I didn't realize I was hand-delivering them to a woman who viewed children as projects to be broken and rebuilt in her own twisted image. The first few weeks seemed fine on the surface, but the perfection of the Henderson household was suffocating. I'd visit, and the house would be silent. Not a peaceful silence, but a heavy, pressurized quiet. The children wouldn't run to the door. They would sit on the velvet sofa, hands folded in their laps, looking at Mrs. Henderson for permission before they even breathed. I noticed the toys I had sent with them were missing. When I asked, Mrs. Henderson whispered that she was encouraging a minimalist environment to reduce overstimulation. I felt a prickle of unease, but the kids were clean, fed, and attending an elite school. I told myself I was being oversensitive. Then December arrived. Our agency has a secret Santa program for the VIP donors in the city. These are high-net-worth individuals who buy top-of-the-line gifts. High-end Lego sets, professional art kits, designer clothes, and the softest, most expensive plushies you can imagine. These kids, who had lived in poverty their whole lives, were finally going to have a movie star Christmas. Their biological grandmother, a woman who was 3 months sober and desperate to show her love, had also sent a massive crate filled with hand-knitted blankets and personal treasures. I delivered those gifts on December 20th. I remember the trunk of my car was sagging under the weight of the joy I was bringing. I hauled the boxes into the Henderson foyer, expecting excitement. Instead, Mrs. Henderson watched me with a look of pure, unadulterated disgust. She didn't see toys. She saw clutter and undeserved rewards. She told me to leave them by the door and that she would handle it. I left that day feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. 2 days before Christmas, I did a surprise wellness check. I walked into that multi-million-dollar home and my heart shattered. There was no tree. There were no lights. There wasn't even a single festive card on the mantel. It was like Christmas had been erased. I found the children in the den, staring at a blank wall while Mrs. Henderson read a book in the corner. When I asked Lily if she was excited for her new art set, she didn't look at me. She looked at the floor and whispered, "We don't need things, Sarah. We need discipline." I felt like I had been slapped. I pulled Mrs. Henderson into the hallway, my voice shaking with a fury I could barely contain. I asked her where the gifts were. She led me to a locked pantry in the basement. She opened the door, and there they were, piled up like trash, some of the wrapping paper already torn as if she had been inspecting them for inappropriate content. She told me, with a voice as cold as a blizzard, that she wasn't going to give them a single thing. She said, "These children come from a lineage of entitlement and weak character. If I give them these luxuries now, I am simply raising the next generation of addicts. They need to understand that life is about sacrifice, not shiny toys. They will spend Christmas Day in reflection and prayer, not greed." Ich skrimte her. I told her she was a monster. I told her that these were traumatized children, not social experiments. She just smiled that hauntingly polite smile, and reminded me that she was their legal foster mother, and that if I tried to interfere with her parenting methods, she would file a report that would have me stripped of my license. She knew the system. She knew I was technically powerless. I left that house in a state of total emotional collapse, sobbing so hard I had to pull over on the highway, because I couldn't see through the tears. So that is the abyss I was staring into. I was the only person in the world who knew that 3 innocent children were about to have their hearts broken by a woman who enjoyed the power of withholding love. I was a state employee, bound by 1,000 rules and regulations, but I was also a human being who couldn't live with myself if I did nothing. I was at a crossroads. Do I play it safe and keep my career, or do I risk everything for a moment of justice? Before I reveal the absolute, high-stakes madness of what I did on Christmas Eve, I need you to pause. This is the moment where the story changes forever. Go to the comments and tell me. Would you have walked away? Would you have trusted the system to handle it later? Or would you have done something illegal to save those kids? I'm waiting to see who among you has the heart of a protector. I spent Christmas Eve in a state of cold, calculated desperation. I knew that if I didn't act, those kids would wake up to a void. I called my supervisor, Brenda, and I didn't ask for permission. I told her what was happening. Brenda is a veteran, she's seen it all, and she knew that Mrs. Henderson was a protected foster parent because of her status in the community. Brenda told me that if I went in there and took those kids or those gifts without a court order, I could be arrested for kidnapping and theft. She told me to wait until the 26th, and we would file a motion. But I knew that by the 26th, the damage would be done. The lesson of worthlessness would be etched into their souls. I hung up the phone and realized that for the first time in my life, I was going to be the bad guy to do the right thing. I drove to the store and bought the biggest, strongest industrial trash bags I could find. I grabbed my spare set of keys to the Henderson house. Keys I was never supposed to use without an appointment, and I drove back into that gated community at 11 p.m. The house was dark. It looked like a tomb. I let myself in through the side door, my heart hammering against my ribs so loudly I thought the neighbors would hear it. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a siren. I crept down to the basement, the air feeling colder with every step. I reached the pantry and found it was locked with a new deadbolt. I felt a surge of panic, but then I saw a heavy metal fire extinguisher on the wall. I didn't care about the noise anymore. I smashed that lock with everything I had. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. I burst into the pantry and started shoveling gifts into the bags. I didn't care about being neat. I grabbed the Legos, the books, the sweaters, and that beautiful, fluffy unicorn for Mia. I was crying, gasping for air, driven by a primal need to rescue these pieces of joy. Just as I tied the second bag, the lights flickered on. Mrs. Henderson was standing at the top of the basement stairs, silhouetted in the doorway like a ghost. She didn't scream. She didn't call the police. She just looked down at me with a look of pure, icy hatred. "You've destroyed your life for these worthless children," she whispered. I looked up at her, holding Mia's unicorn against my chest, and I said, "No, I finally started living it." I pushed past her, hauling the heavy bags. I didn't stop. I ran to my car, threw the bags in the trunk, and sped away just as I saw her picking up her phone to call the authorities. It was the most beautiful, chaotic, and righteous moment of my entire life. We spent the day playing, eating, and for the first time in months, I heard them laugh. It wasn't the quiet, suppressed laugh they had at Mrs. Henderson's. It was the loud, belly-aching laugh that every child deserves. The war that followed was brutal. Mrs. Henderson hired a high-priced legal team to sue me and the agency. She tried to frame me as an unstable, thieving employee who had a breakdown. For months, my career hung by a thread. I was placed on unpaid leave, My reputation was dragged through the mud in local papers, and I faced a formal ethics board. But during that time, something happened. Other foster children who had been in Mrs. Henderson's care years ago started coming forward. They spoke about the lessons she taught, the withheld food, the canceled holidays, and the systematic breaking of their wills. The VIP foster parent was revealed to be a psychological predator. The case against me was dropped, and Mrs. Henderson was not only stripped of her license, but was hit with a massive civil suit from the family she had harmed. Today Lily, Tom, and Mia are with their grandmother in a house that is loud, messy, and overflowing with love. They still call me sometimes, and every year on Christmas Eve, I send them a box of the most ridiculous, over-the-top gifts I can find. That experience cost me my perfect record and almost my career, but it gave me a clarity I never had before. I learned that the system is only as good as the people who are willing to break it when it fails. I learned that a single act of theft can be an act of salvation. And I learned that as long as there are people like Mrs. Henderson in the world, there need to be people like me who are willing to become the villain to save a child's hero. If you believe that a child's joy is worth more than a set of rules, if you're standing with me and those kids today, then please hit that like button. It's a small gesture, but it means the world to the story. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss these deep, raw, and emotional journeys. We need to build a community that stands for the vulnerable. And please, I want to hear your final thoughts on this whole journey in the comments. Was I a hero or a criminal? Could you have handled the pressure of that basement? I'm reading every single comment. I'll see you all in the next story.